Hello, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we are here for the Great Prog War. This is battle number 13 already. Yeah, battle number 13, which will come out tomorrow morning, Saturday the 14th of January. So the battle today is between the band King Crimson and their album Larks. See if I can get a better shot of it there. There you go. That's better. Larks, Tongues, and Aspic. This is an album I've owned. I've got it in one of my purchases a few months ago when I bought a whole bunch of King Crimson albums. I actually hadn't gotten to listen to this one. I was working my way up through all of them. This one was on my list, of course, because it has such a high reputation. The other, his opponent today is Rick Wakeman, and the album that Rick Wakeman has here is called The Red Planet. Now, for those of you who don't know much about Rick Wakeman, he's got about 90 studio albums, so this is one of the more recent ones. This one came from 2020. This album comes out from 1973. So kind of an interesting battle. Talk a little bit about King Crimson first. Obviously, King Crimson, one of the great pioneering progressive rock bands of the 1970s and late 60s. Pretty much run and dominated by Robert Fripp, the guitar player, and the matriarch of the band. So in this encounter with them, I know that Bill Bruford, I believe this was his first album with them, and I also think this was the first album for John Wetton, who has a very similar voice to Greg Lake, which I like quite a bit with this group. It's funny, I don't like Greg Lake's voice as much with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but it's the same voice, right? Anyways, this is a great album. I've only listened to it. This is the first time I've ever listened to it in its entirety. Now, I have heard some of these tracks live on various venues at different times over the last couple of years, but I haven't actually sit down and listened to this album in its entirety. Very good album, I think. It has a lot of stuff to offer on it. A lot of really technical stuff that's really good. The bass playing here is really good as well, better than I think any of its predecessors for King Crimson, at least the ones I've listened to at this point, which are the first three. Also some really good guitar work by Robert Fripp, but that's to be expected. The big change is Bill Bruford's drumming is exceptional, which Bill Bruford's drumming always is exceptional. He's one of the best drummers in the world, if you ask me. So there's about 4 tracks on this that I liked quite a bit. The first track, Larks, Tongues, and Aspics, Part 1. Lots of great instrumentation on this. And the last part, Larks, Tongues, and Aspics, Part 2, has a lot of heavy guitar riffing and a lot of strong bass parts on this as well. But they're both instrumentals, and I'm not, as you know, overly inclined to listen to instrumentals as much, although I've been getting inundated with tons of instrumentals over the last couple of weeks from the different bands that I'm listening to, and I guess I'm becoming accustomed to it, because I was okay with both of these tracks. The two I liked the most were I think it's called Exercise, but I wrote it and I can't read it. Maybe it's on the album. I can see it on the album. It's Exiles. Yeah, I wrote down. Boy, my handwriting's terrible. They should never give me a chalkboard job. It won't work. Anyways, it's a mellow track. Lots of good keyboards here and synthesizers. Really nice mellotron. Wetton's voice is very strong on this particular track, and I just feel like it could easily fit on the first album. It's that type of track. The other song I liked was Easy Money. Some good guitar bits here, lots of drum and percussion bits, which are he makes a lot of very interesting sound noises for this particular song. And Wetton's voice is really strong again here. And that, to me, the 3 tracks here with the vocal parts on it are probably all my favorite tracks, mostly because I think John Wetton's voice really suits King Crimson's style very well. So, yeah, great album. The other album I don't have a prop for. It's called Red Planet. It's basically a guy on the cover with a helmet on the red planet. Very surprising this album was for me. I didn't know what to expect because my experience with Rick Wakeman's music comes from the Six Wives of King Henry VIII and the King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table albums, I think back in the 70s. And they were very different from this. This is much different than that. I thought, okay, I hope it's just not another 6 or 7 tracks of him playing amazing keyboards and nothing else on the track. Because as much as I didn't mind that with the Six Wives of King Henry VIII, I just didn't see that doing very well here in this particular spot and venue. So, but it wasn't like that at all. He has his own band that plays some actually very good drums and keyboards and lots of excellent guitar work on here. Yeah, and the best thing about this particular album is that I would not have expected this from Rick Wakeman, but the rhythms, the bass tone, the rhythm of the album, the melody of the whole album, the if you like the bass or the rhythm section of the whole group, in other words, is really quite well done, and I was very surprised how good it was. The first, and of course he's used titles from landmarks on Mars. I only know this because I tend to be into astronomy a lot and I study maps of Mars and the moon and other things. He's got a lot of mountain ranges here like Arcia, Moines, and all the different moines that are on the red planet. They use the word moines instead of mountains or volcanoes. That's basically what they are. They're volcanoes. So the first song on the album, Acris, which is has a very good rhythm and high tempo, lots of good keyboards and guitars on the song. Thanos Foals, which came out next, some really nice chart type keyboards here, like just really good keyboard parts on this particular song, as there is on most of the stuff, because that's what he is, a keyboardist, and a damn fine one too. But I really like the rhythm section very much on this song. And then Arcia Mons, which is the third track, great, starting with some very heavy guitar and the physical music part, like the drums and the bass section on this as well. Keyboards are nice, a lot of really interesting sounds that he does on this, and there's a nice acoustic guitar that runs throughout this particular track too, which is good. And then the keyboards are really heavy towards the end of the track. And for the most of the rest of the album, there's a lot of that. It's a pretty solid album. And this, again, of course, was the only time I'd listened to it. I have to say this, and it's impossible to not do this, but I try to be completely objective with both albums, not allowing who's doing what and what the group is, in order to give a objective view and then an objective decision. But that's sometimes hard to do when you know that this is King Crimson's one of their great albums, and then you have this album by Rick Wakeman, who has 90 albums, and you think, well, it's just another one of his albums. But I have to say this, I was greatly surprised by the Rick Wakeman album, and I was also pleasantly pleased with the King Crimson album. I thought this, though, would be a landslide. I thought King Crimson would wipe him out, and it's not even a point to listen to his album. But I was pleasantly surprised. This was not an easy decision, and at some point when I was listening to the Rick Wakeman album, I kept saying to myself, I might have to give Rick Wakeman the victory over here over Larks, Tongues, and Aspics, which I would never have thought that was going to happen. But as the album went on, it became clear to me that as good as it wasn't at the same level as the King Crimson album. And the tracks on the King Crimson album that I really liked were better than almost anything on his album, with the exception of that Arcia Moines, which I liked a lot. other than that, it was pretty much dominated by King Crimson. There was no bad songs on the King Crimson album. There was no real bad songs on the Rick Wakeman album. So it's kind of like one album's really good and the other album's exceptional. So there's like an inch between the two, and I have to end up at the end. I have to give it to King Crimson. There's no way you can't. This is just a special album. Even on one listen only, I recognize that right away. This is such a good album. The Rick Wakeman album is really good too. I just don't think it's quite as good as this one. So maybe Rick will come back next time, and I won't be as surprised and ready more for him than I was. So this has been a bit of a longer video because these were two really close albums, and I didn't foresee that happening. So I am happy to report that it was very entertaining for me and enjoyable, and I hope it was for you too. So please like and subscribe. And King Crimson will go on to the next round, and we'll be back with the next Prog War battle number 14 for Sunday. So have a good day and take care.